Hey, everybody. Welcome to Called Up the Prospects podcast. I'm Chris Peters from FloHockey, joined as always by Cam Robinson, and it is summer, but the season is starting. Cam, are you feeling rested, relaxed, and ready to get back to it?
Buddy, yeah, I am. Season 2 of the pod's kicking off here. I mean, had a nice little break. I skipped the summer showcase, so I was on a boat, I was on a lake, I was on the ocean. I've been digging holes in my backyard and painting stuff. It's been a good time for sure, but I'm ready to get back at it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I did go to the summer showcase. I'm not trying to shame anybody here, Cam, but I did go, and and I sometimes wish that I just stayed home and mowed the lawn and did all the things that I had to do. But there was plenty to talk about from that. So we will talk about the summer showcase and some of not just what happened there, but kind of the aftermath. There were some things that happened that were kind of interesting, some head scratching things, and also some really underwhelming performances by a lot of top prospects, but we can talk about that a little bit more later. We're also going to talk about the 2026 NHL Draft Kickoff, which is essentially underway. The World Junior Summer Showcase, Gavin McKenna was there, Viggo Bjork was there, Ivar Stenberg was there, some of the top prospects for the draft. We've got the Hlinka Gretzky Cup with guys like Keaton Verhoff and Tynan Lawrence and so many others that are going to be very important players in the 2026 NHL draft. That will start next week, so we want to at least get you ready for that tournament, which is always interesting to kind of help set the table for the draft season. We'll also talk a little bit about, is it, how big of a deal is it really on the calendar? And then also a lot of this NCAA, and not just NCAA, but player movement, pre-draft, post-draft. There's a lot to talk about, some major developments there. So we'll talk about that as well. But Cam, before we get into all of that, let's talk a little, let's kind of get caught up on the summer. There are some things, I know you've been busy, I've been busy, even as we're lounging poolside or wherever we may be. There's a lot of news that kind of is happening. And one of those things is kind of this opportunity that still exists for player movement, not just below the NHL, but at the NHL level. And I understand, you've been kicking around, talking to sources and different things of that nature. And I want to talk a little bit about what the status is with the Edmonton Oilers and their goaltending situation. And maybe if they're going to look for somebody younger to kind of maybe bring into the fold to see if maybe that's one way to solve the problem.
Yeah, so it's no secret. The Oilers have been searching for a long-term solution in net for a while now. And it dates back to, they were trying to get Jacob Markstrom 100 years ago when he was a free agent and ended up going to Calgary. So I've been told, someone brought this to me and I checked around and it kind of passed the sniff test for sure, is that, they've been in contact with Detroit. And, I think their first person they asked about was Trey Augustine. But the Red Wings are basically, that's a non-starter at this point. Very, very high on that player. But Sebastian Cossa, right? I think that potentially the Red Wings are a little bit lower on him. I think they're definitely lower on him than they are on Trey. But that they're listening to teams that are calling and, not actively shopping this player, but, he's got the first round pedigree. He's got the massive size. We talked about it when he was a draft eligible, great lateral agility, covers that bottom of the net so well when he goes into the butterfly, and then the top half because he's so massive. The numbers haven't popped, but they were fine last year in the A. And so I think that for the Oilers, if this is a player that they're targeting, I think it makes a lot of sense for them, is that he's got the massive upside. Not ready to step in and be a starter just yet, but you need that player in your system pushing up. It's something they've been desperately searching for what, like a decade now? Over a decade? Like when was the last time they had a top flight goaltender prospect coming up?
Right. I mean, you maybe have to go back to Devin Dubnyk, and he didn't necessarily live up to that in Edmonton. Yeah. It was really after the fact that he came through, and that's a guy there. And we go back to the draft of Sebastian Cossa, and the Edmonton Oilers traded out of a spot where Jesper Wallstedt was there. Now, Wallstedt has struggled a bit to kind of get traction, similarly to Cossa. We've been watching these two guys together, but Edmonton traded out of that spot. And I'm trying to. Why am I blanking on the player? I know this is center that they drafted.
Xavier. Isn't it Bourgault? Was it Bourgault who they got?
Bourgault. Thank you. Yes.
Exactly. Yes. Okay. Good. Yeah.
That is an indication of what happened to young Xavier. Although there was that situation where he kept going on waivers and like all over the place, and and in the end they they had an opportunity to maybe find that long-term solution in net, as risky as it may have been at that time. So here's the thing with Kosa. Last 2 seasons, he's been fairly consistent, but not accelerating at the level that maybe you would expect by this point. One thing I'll say is that the Detroit Red Wings have been very, very, very deliberate and careful with the path for Sebastian Kosa. They took him out of the WHL and didn't put him straight into the AHL. They had him play an entire season in the ECHL with the Toledo Walleye, which I think was the right call. They gave him a couple games in the AHL, gave him a taste. Full-time starter the next year, 40 appearances with Grand Rapids, a .913 save percentage. Only lost 9 games in regulation that year. Was decent, not amazing in the playoffs. And then this year, 41 games played, a .911 save percentage, 2 playoff games, bounced out, not a great showing there, .868 save percentage. It's 2 games. Let's not get too hung up on save percentages, but that can happen. So you go back and really, I think now this is the thing is that, I think the expectation was the step would be taken next year, and then it didn't necessarily come. So the question is how much value would that play? Like, what kind of return could Detroit even get for a Kosa at this point, especially from a team like Edmonton that doesn't necessarily have a ton of usable assets at this point?
Couple interesting things too before I get to that is that
Sure.
So that was Ken Holland, right? That was Ken Holland running the show there in Edmonton when they didn't take Wallstead. I was told that they moved back fully expecting to still get Wallstead. They thought that they could slip back and still get him. Similar to what we just saw in LA, Ken Holland is in with the Kings now, that they stepped back thinking they could still get Mason West, and they missed out on him too. So, I'm a big proponent of sliding back and getting value on picks and adding extra darts and all that stuff. But when you have one guy that you really want, maybe sometimes it's just best to get your guy. Hey, and that's a couple times now that it's I think it's bit Kenny Holland. As far as what Kosa is worth, the goaltender market is notoriously thin, right? Like we know that, we see it. Artur Silovs just went for a 4th and Riley Stillman. Yeah, he was a former 1st-round pick, but he is not a 1st-round pick quality player. He's an AHL depth player. And that is looked at as like a good return. Like that's a good return. Caden Primo, what did he lose 1 game in the AHL last year? And he went for a 7th, right? Like it's goaltenders don't hold a lot of value. Even like as starters, they don't hold a lot of value, it seems like. So when you're talking about a prospect,
and Shilovs won a Calder Cup. Like, I mean, like he was unbelievable in the Calder Cup. Yeah. So like that, you're just saying like,
and a bronze at the World
that's a guy that has more
before
potential.
Yeah, he's a big game guy. I mean, he stepped up for the Canucks when Demko was hurt there a couple seasons ago and looked phenomenal in the playoffs too, right? So he has shown miles more. Now, what he doesn't have is he's not 6'7" and he's not a former first round pick. And so teams do love pedigree, right? We know first rounders get more opportunities than most because of that pedigree. So, is he going to be worth more than Shilovs, who's going to be lost for nothing on waivers? Yeah, I'd imagine he would be. But is it going to be much more than a decent prospect and maybe a 2nd or a 3rd? Probably not if they do decide to move him. So for Detroit, there's no pressure point for them. So if Edmonton actually really wants this player, they're going to have to step up and make an offer that Detroit's like, okay, Steve Yzerman's like, that's fine. We have Trey. We can move this player up because we like the player we're getting back at a different position.
Yeah, and I would say the emergence of Trey Augustine is an important factor in this. If you're the Red Wings and you've taken this deliberate, you've invested a lot in developing Sebastian Kosa. The other thing that's important to point out, he's still only 22 years old, which in goalie years is still pretty young. And so only the most exceptional goalies are making the NHL at 21, 22 years old without the path. And also Kosa was a goalie. We're talking post-COVID player. A lot of these players have had a very strange trajectory where there have been, they played a shortened season. They played, his draft year in 2021, Kosa appeared in 19 games. That was the abridged season due to COVID, a .941 save percentage. He's never remotely repeated that. And again, that's a 19 game sample, but it was a lot more about the upside, the potential, that he has, and he still has potential. He still has upside. He still has
does.
this opportunity to be a number one goalie in the NHL. And so, yeah, it's one of those things where if Detroit, I think you have to make sure that if this is the move, considering all that you've invested in the development time, you do have to make sure that you're getting your worth for that player. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of deal that could be. But also, again, former Edmonton Oil King. So you know, Edmonton, you know, something it can happen. So there's stuff like that. You never really know. So that's an interesting one. I want to talk a little bit about the transactional nature of hockey beneath the NHL now. And we're seeing it play out on a semi-weekly basis where a big-time NHL draft pick, we've seen 2 top 10 picks since the last time we recorded, not to mention the other things with Gavin McKenna and everything else. We see Porter Martone commit to Michigan State, number 6 overall pick. We've got Roger McQueen, number 10 overall pick, committing to the to Providence College. So really fascinating to me that you've got these are big time players that have had, you know, great success. I mean, obviously Roger McQueen was injured for most of last season. You know, I saw at the World Junior Summer Showcase, Caden Lindstrom was also going to Michigan State, was sidelined most of last season. I still think like there's still only a little bit of time left. Like clashes will start for most of these colleges in the next couple of weeks. And so if you're going to commit to a school, it's going to have to be probably this week or next at the absolute latest. And I think it's hard, but you know, I know you mentioned it in particular, you know, the WHL, we've seen a lot of their top end guys move to college. And so I know you had a tweet about, you know, the who they've kind of lost and what's happening there. I mean, what are you hearing out west at the moment about what's happening at this time?
I don't think anybody's happy about it. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. I don't think the league is very happy about it. I don't think they're happy with a lot of people too, with how it's been reported as well. Is that it feels like it's David versus Goliath at this point, right? That the NCAA just they're playing with different rules, and it's true. They're playing with with a stacked deck, so to speak, because they have
draft,
not infinite, but right. They get to just grab and recruit, right? They don't have to pick and choose through the draft. They have all sorts of money, right? Way more money. So the NIL money is one thing, but they have so much more money to just build out these tremendous facilities, hire the very best world-class specialists in their field to work with these players, have that campus lifestyle. And it's like, we've talked about it before, when we were speculating that McKenna was going to go to PSU, it's like Penn State. Everybody who goes to Penn State to visit it is like just in awe of this massive university, all the co-eds. It's like the atmosphere. It's just tremendous. And you like staple that up against Moose Jaw or Spokane or like even Victoria, which is one of my favorite cities in the world. It's like you just can't offer the same experience for the players. And so, yes, the WHL, the CHL in general can do more. They can they can allocate their money better. They can upgrade their facilities. They can try to make it as welcoming as possible, but they're never going to be able to hit on what some of these big schools down south can do. And so it has to be the path, right? The CHL to the NHL. It's that tried and true path. But I think right now, especially the WHL has been taking it on the chin. And we projected it, right? We said if even a fraction of the names that we've been hearing end up going, it's going to be a bloodbath. And I think at this point, we can call it a bloodbath for the WHL. They have lost elite young players, and it's going to continue to happen. Some of them are already committing. They'll play another year and then they'll go after their draft season. So and this is what we were going to say all along, is that we're going to see the league get younger. And they just have to adapt and evolve. And like I said, try to allocate some funds to better promote their cities, even if they're up against it.
Yeah. So there, I think there's a lot there to unpack too. And I think one thing that creates this further deficit for the WHL is how hard it is to travel in that league. And these players are giving up those long bus rides for chartered flights.
Yeah.
Like that's like, and you think in the cases of both Roger McQueen and Caden Lindstrom, 2 guys that are coming off of severe back injuries, that now you don't have to sit on the bus for
Sitting
that
on a
long.
bus.
That
Yeah.
that is a big attraction. And I think that that's one of the areas, where, in the WHL, it is what it is. Geography creates a more widespread league. The fact that the league continues to thrive under those circumstances and never really lost players before, allowed them to kind of have that. So now you have to start rethinking that entire kind of dynamic of your league in terms of attracting and keeping players and putting them in the best environment. I think that the USHL will say, like, even though they're spread out, their league is their schedule is structured in such a way where maybe the travel isn't as onerous and different things like that. So there's a number of things that you might have to do in the future there. But I do think that the facilities, the nutrition, the strength and conditioning, what colleges have and at the Division I level, and this is not all of them are created equal. The big time programs,
Nope.
the guys that the programs that are getting these players are definitely the
Big time.
places like Michigan, Wisconsin, North Dakota, the Big Ten schools, plus the ones where hockey is king. Their facilities are unrivaled, and in some cases better than NHL facilities. And people say that there's no way, and I promise you that there is.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah, just go. I mean, you
ND?
go into some of these. Yeah, watch any of those YouTube videos of their inside their, the cold tubs. And I just saw one for Michigan State, and I was like, that's silly. It's honestly stupid. But good for them. So
good for them.
So you've got kind of, yeah, exactly. But I mean, and for the players now, and I think you bring up a great point there about it is about investment. How do you have to sell players on a vision that you're going to get them to where they want to go. And in doing so, putting all of those tools in place. And I think this is the same thing that the USHL is going to have to do versus the CHL, because we'll talk about that a little bit. This has been as we record this week, there has been, probably a dozen or so players that were previously, their rights were held by a USHL team that are going to CHL teams. There's not as much of a player coming back, there's not as much as it's not going the other way. Maybe they'll come from other leagues like the NAHL, the CJHL leagues and other things like that, BCHL. But again, you're dealing with some of those additional, deficits, I guess, in terms of, whatever it may be, amenities or what have you. So the it's going to come on down to the owners making the investment. And I think that there is absolutely work being done behind the scenes in all leagues to best position themselves for whatever this future is. I've maintained from the beginning, the sooner they can find some common ground and find out where everybody can kind of play their role in this. But Cam, you and I both know, in the world of junior hockey or any sports at all, ego is going to drive a lot of the decisions. And I do think that that's where it can be dangerous. I did want to talk, there are still some players that at least have not made their intentions known and have not yet signed NHL contracts. So do you think we'll see other potential commitments, and maybe what are the names we should at least be watching for one way or the other?
I was asked this by someone on Twitter a couple weeks ago, and I said, yes, I do think we're going to see one or two more. And I had Roger McQueen in my back pocket, knowing that was quite likely to occur. The other two names, Kayshawn Aitchison, Cash, same rep as Martone, definitely has been keeping his options wide open. I don't think, and I think, was it Ryan MacArthur? Correct me if I'm wrong, but he reported that today or yesterday too, that he was hearing that he's not going to go. And I think that's a safe bet at this point. I don't think Aitchison's going to go. I think he's going to return to Barrie. Caleb Desnoyers, I think, is a long shot. I think but it's still potentially that window might be just open a crack just yet. So maybe we see him do that. He was named captain of Moncton though, before the draft, maybe right before he was drafted. Maybe as like a please stay, well, here's the captaincy. And I mean, that might work. It's a big honor to be the captain of a CHL club, and especially one that contended for the Memorial Cup last year. So at this point, I'm going to put my money on no, that we don't see any.
Yeah.
And now I'm just going to bring this one up Haven't talked to the kid, haven't talked to the agent about it at all. But somebody on the NCAA side, when I was talking to them about like how late can we see this happen? And somebody told me that it's not completely out of the realm of possibility to see a player go to camp on their own dime, stay for 2 days, 48 hours, I believe, realize that there's not a roster spot for them, and sign with an NCAA, commit to an NCAA club and make that move. And so there's kind of only one player that would make sense for, and it's Michael Misa. I've been saying it for months and months, is that his primary focus is to make the NHL. He's training hard for it. He thinks he's got a shot. But as of 1 p.m. on Thursday, I don't think he's signed his ELC yet. And so I think that there is a world, right? There is a world that maybe something like that happens. But again, I'm betting we don't see any more players go.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about Misa in a little bit on when we talk about the World Junior Summer Showcase, because he was there and I have thoughts. But yeah, but Cam, I think the other thing too, with this whole thing and that I talked to some college folks about, I wanted to get a better understanding of, the schools that have opted into the house settlement that is putting roster limits on teams. There is a 26 player roster limit for those teams. So here's the hard part about that. If you use one of those 26 roster spots on a player and that player decides halfway through the year that school is not for them, they cannot be replaced. Once you submit your 26, those are your 26. So a number of teams will not submit or will not roster 26 out of the gate. That does put them in a bind, because as things happen, unlike the NHL, you have a rash of injuries. There's no AHL to call guys up from. There's nowhere to take those guys. You usually have a surplus roster that you healthy scratch for most of the year. You got some walk-ons, you get some preferred walk-ons, you get some guys that are on limited scholarship packages. Those are the guys that are sitting out. Sometimes it's your true freshmen. So that is one of the other things that I think is important to note, is that there is a level of risk that some of these teams take on. I mean, it's happened before, like in years past, where a player left at midseason and then they were able to bring in. Last year, Mikhail Yegorov was a midseason replacement for Boston University, and not even a replacement. They just added him. They're like, hey, we needed another goalie, and he came in and bang, he was awesome for them. So there's a lot of different things that, it's not as simple as a one-to-one thing. And this 26 player roster limit is going to be really challenging. So you have all of that happening with this new era of junior hockey and everything else. And, getting back to Caleb Desnoyers for 1 second, the Moncton Wildcats have been one of the most aggressive QMJHL teams when it comes to recruiting American players. And they are going to probably have one of the largest collections of American players in the CHL this year, which is going to be very interesting to see, and how that pays off. If you have a Caleb Desnoyers at the center of your roster, that does go a lot further for you as a team. So that's really interesting. We also have seen a number of imports. Adam Novotny is coming to the Peterborough Pete. So that's a top end draft guy that is coming into the CHL as well. A number of Russian players. There's another import roster spot for CHL teams now, which they are using. Yeah. So seeing a lot of that as well. But yeah, anything else before we move on to some World Junior Summer Showcase fallout here?
No, I think we touched on a good amount.
Yeah, I think so too. So a lot happening, a lot of things. So let's get into little more summer catch up here. I was at the World Junior Summer Showcase. It was kind of weird at times. There were things that, both the US and Canada looked not great in the games against Finland and Sweden. So that didn't help. Canada didn't name their roster until the day before they got to the US. And that was largely because they had 8 first-round draft picks injured and unable to perform. They did send their returnees home midway through the camp. And so, that left guys like Michael Misa to have an opportunity. One guy that wasn't a returnee but did go home early was Zane Perek. And so that to me felt a little weird. I know you and I were texting back and forth about it. He left after 2 days, did not play in any of the games. I believe it was, described as a nagging injury situation. Um, but it just didn't feel quite right to me. What have you heard anything on that?
I mean, it's you know, like it was reported, and I reported out there too, is that something that he's been dealing with a little bit since the tail end of last season, and some of these players, like it's a big. It's like when they go to something like this, is that like they're traveling all day. There's layovers. They're getting there. They're skating right away. And I think that it was something that was bugging them in the lead up to that, and whether or not Hockey Canada was like play through it or gut it out or whatnot, I'm not sure. But the player obviously decided, in conjunction with the Flames, that the best place for him to be right now is in Calgary, getting some therapy on this nagging injury, so that he can train. And realistically, like I think the Flames are hopeful he's on the big club this year, right? I
Yeah.
think
And he is
Zane is
too.
hopeful
Yeah.
he's on the big
Yeah.
club, right?
Yeah.
Is that he's on the big club
Yeah.
this year. So if he's not at the World Juniors, I think that's because he's with the Flames, and that's just fine. Now, there's something about Perek and Hockey Canada that hasn't they don't jive. It seems like there's been a little, whether it's a wall built up or what, it's like it just hasn't been clicked. And we saw Brant Clark too, right? Like Hockey Canada isn't shy about having kind of just these different feelings than the general consensus of people with some of their players, especially their high end offensive defensemen who maybe leave a little less on the defensive side of things. And so, no, I think Zane is, last I checked in, is that he's feeling good and he's training hard and he's focused on making the Flames roster. And I think that's priority number one. And so if he is
Yeah.
down in, at the World Juniors, I think that's a huge boost for Canada, regardless of what happened here in the summer, because it would be astronomically silly if they left him off the roster again.
Yeah, it would. It would. And you know what? I think like the reason that I said that it felt weird is that, Zane made it pretty clear in his comments to the media that he's like, hopefully I'll be on the Flames next year. And
Yeah.
like basically like if I don't make the World Juniors, it's because I'm on the Flames, so
Yeah.
I think that's one of those things. Yeah, there's some frostiness there because I mean, he also was invited to the World Championship, and then when they got a few guys not on the
Yeah.
team, which actually also happened
Yeah.
to Cole Hudson this year when Zach Werenski joined the team,
And
and
that
so
does happen,
that
Yeah.
does happen. Yeah, and exactly, and you can't complain when you're getting unseated by guys that played at the Four Nations and different things like that. So
Yeah.
there's that. So the other things that I wanted to talk about the World Junior Summer Showcase. If you want to hear who I thought stood out, you can go read that over at FloHockey.tv. Did a little write up on the players that stood out. But what I was a little bit disappointed by was actually, and again, I don't, the World Junior Summer Showcase, it is in the summer. I don't, I think it's more about finding the guys who just don't belong at all, and then the
Mm.
guys that you'll be watching for the rest of the year. So this is not an indictment on anybody, but I did think that of the big time players that Canada had in camp, Michael Misa was maybe one of the least visible of them. I thought that I wanted
Mm.
to see more from him in this camp. I watched, every game, and I was still kind of just waiting to see him take that step. They put him in positions to succeed, and then guys like Cole Reshny popped, Sasha Boisvert popped. Other players were popping, and especially considering that Michael didn't make the team last year,
Yeah.
that there was still some of that lingering, like, I'll show you, didn't go to the World Under 18s, kind of skipped some of these other things. And then I figured like this was a kind of like he would maybe show up with like that prove it mode again. Do I think it means
It's
anything about him as
July.
a prospect? Absolutely not. But it was just one of those things when you see some of these other guys elevate and other things, and you're just like, I just I didn't see much of what made him that top guy. So that was a little bit underwhelming.
Mm.
But I think there are a couple of guys that, like, I obviously if he's available, he's on the team. Like I don't think there's any doubt about that. And there are a couple of guys, like I just mentioned, that I think are going to have a better chance to make Team Canada than maybe I thought initially. And one of them is Cole Reshny, who I thought was one of the best Canadian forwards in the entire camp, drafted by the Calgary Flames, headed to North Dakota next year. And then Sasha Boisvert, who played on the power play unit, he was killing penalties. He was kind of doing a little bit of everything. Good two-way game. I just thought that those were two guys that I'm like, hey, if the camp matters at all, they've given the coaching staff a reason to say, hey, this is, make sure you're watching us, and it'll be. The funny thing is they both played together. Reshny's going to North Dakota. He's essentially Sasha Boisvert's replacement because he transferred to
Yeah.
BU. So like
Yeah.
they were on the same line. That looked really good. Other guys like Henry Muse, Malcolm Spence, they had moments. Caden Lindstrom in the
Michigan
split squad
boys.
game was one of the best players. He didn't play as well after that. So, it's just, but again, he's still getting back into it. I
Hmm.
was like, that is vintage Caden Lindstrom in the split squad game, which was one of the best games of the whole thing, the Canadian split squad game. So lots to take away. But I have a question for you, Cam Robinson, because you're in Canada and I'm in the US, and everybody in the US loves to have conspiracy theories, just as everybody in Canada likes to have conspiracy theories going the other way. A lot of these players in Canada's camp are going to NCAA teams. All of those guys I just mentioned are going to the NCAA next year, including Muse, Spence,
Except for Mies.
Boisvert, Reshny, and Misa.
Yeah.
Misa's the only one where it's not. Do you think that CHL NCAA bias comes in at all? I mean, is it? I don't think it'll matter for the big guys, but let's say if it's close, what do you think happens?
Well, let's just take a stroll down memory lane and look at history here. And absolutely, it does, right? Like they traditionally, historically, have leaned heavily on the CHL versus the NCAA kids. And I think that will continue. I don't know how hard of feelings are up right now, but I do think that if, like you said, like it's is Martone in danger of not making this team? No, right? Is Caden Lindstrom? No, those guys should be on the team if they're available. But is Big Raj, right? Is Roger going? I think that one. I think that one stung a little bit extra because at the combine, after he was taken 10th overall, his plan was to go back to Brandon and play for the Wheaties, and then he didn't. And now he's heading to, like, so I do wonder, and I do kind of expect to see a little bias towards the guys that stuck around. And does that, like, all of a sudden give a little boost to Cole Resh or to Braden Coots over a guy like Cole Reshny? If Reshny really pops, no one's trajectory has really been going straight up like his. Very few players going back to, like, what, last January, February, like, he's been a rocket. So if he continues that, he'll be fine. But maybe he has a sluggish start, right? And how much does
Yeah.
the summer camp really matter? And maybe Coots has a really good start in Seattle and he didn't leave. Brady Martin, right? Like there's going to be some guys. I think it's going to be interesting to watch, really interesting, because inevitably the amount of talent that Canada has is that they leave talented players behind. And so, I think we're going to see that again.
It'll be really, really interesting to see if that does happen, if that's something that you can afford to, because obviously Gavin McKenna, Porter Martone, those guys, I don't think so. But yeah, like, I mean, if it's between Brady Martin and one of the guys that went to college, then maybe that's a discussion. And actually Gavin McKenna also didn't have the most amazing World Junior Summer Showcase, and I'm not going to lean too heavily on that either. But so just to make sure that people understand, I'm not picking on Michael Misa. There were plenty of guys that didn't look all that good in that tournament until kind of towards the end. And that's not to say also the U.S. roster. I think there's a lot of concern about their ability to compete in this event. Before we move on to our 2026 NHL draft kind of season kickoff and talk about the Hlinka Gretzky Cup, one other piece that I think is important to note: Anton Frondell, number 2 overall pick of the Chicago Black, or number 3 overall pick of the Chicago Blackhawks, did decide that he is going to return to Djurgården. This was a decision that he made pre-draft. I think it was something pretty much everyone knew. However, I do think that there was some motivation to try and get him to say, hey, at least stick around for training camp. Doesn't sound like that's even going to happen. So Anton Frondell will stay in Sweden this year. what do you think about that? You know, he because he's from, you know, he would be eligible to play in the AHL if they wanted him to. But I mean, I think with Djurgården getting promoted to the SHL, this always seemed like the path for him. Oops, you're on mute still.
It's a no-brainer. You know, he gets to stay at home. He gets to train with the club that he trained with. I mean, yes, he's a third overall pick. Yes, he has a nice future, but he's also a player that, you know, when they were down in the Allsvenskan, was a bit piece in the playoffs, right? He was a depth player for them, and you know, healthy scratched at times too. It's not like this was a premier first line player throughout the entire season. So now they're up jumping to the SHL. It's going to be even more of a challenge, right? So that's going to be a great spot for him. The season starts earlier over there. There's no point in him going to camp, missing the first part of his season in Sweden just to go back to Sweden. So no, I think this is the perfect spot for him. I'd leave him over there for a year. Hopefully he pops, right? Like, remember, Elias Pettersson had a similar thing, right? Played his draft year in the Allsvenskan, and then he was like rookie of the year, MVP, league MVP in the playoffs, won a championship, and was like, all right, off to Vancouver you go. We are not expecting that from Anton Frondell, but we are hoping that he takes a nice big step and has a really productive season and proves, hey, I'll just go straight from Djurgården to Chicago. And if he doesn't, that's okay too. Then you bring him over and plug him in the American League, give him a season there to get his feet wet in North America, then bring him up too. It's like, there's no need to rush this kid.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, I think it's the best path for him. It's the step up. He didn't go to the summer showcase mainly because he's been crossing the Atlantic like 50 times this year. So they're like, you know, just give him a chance to just be where he's comfortable. I mean, this is the team that he grew up cheering for. You know, this is the team that he loved growing up. You know, so like this is a dream come true for him to play in the SHL. I think that's a great stepping stone for him to go forward. I know there are some Blackhawks fans that are disappointed because they were hoping to see him come along. And yeah, that roster not looking so good for this year. And I also think that's not a thing that you would want to expose him to at this point anyway. Obviously, Connor Bedard has been living in that for a little bit. But you and I both agree, Connor Bedard, Frank Nazar, other guys, I think this is going to be a year where some of those guys pop. So that will help, but it's not going to get them a lot closer to
out of the basement
playoffs. Yeah. Or not. Yeah. If nothing else, they're still going to be in the running for Gavin McKenna. All right. So that's kind of what's happened more recently between the two times that we recorded this podcast. What I want to talk about next is kind of this 2026 NHL draft kickoff. We've got the Hlinka Gretzky Cup coming up next week. You know, it will not include Russia as they're out still, but it's Canada. Sweden has typically sent a really good team. They will not have Viggo Bjork this year, who is one of the top. He is the top Swedish player in the age group. He went to the World Junior Summer Showcase. And, you know, him, McKenna, and Ivar Stenberg, all at the World Junior Summer Showcase, all, you know, fine. You know, they're all guys that are going to be in that discussion for high in the first round. But the Hlinka Gretzky Cup, it's really Canada and everyone else typically in this event. We've seen some Czech teams and some Slovak teams over the years really push and do a nice job at this event. You know, so Sweden has struggled a bit here typically, but they've had some runs every now and again. But this Canadian team is absolutely loaded, you know, in terms of draft prospects. It's not just that. They also have Landon DuPont who will be the number 1 pick in 2027, odds are. It's just nuts. So I looked, they did play Hungary today. That was nice. Played Hungary, and I think they won 7-1, which seems low.
Perfect.
But good for them. And yeah, so I mean, this is an opportunity though for them to showcase themselves. Who are the guys that you're looking forward to seeing on this Canadian roster? The guys that, you know, I think obviously you and I both are expecting massive things from Keaton Verhoff in this tournament, but maybe who else are you keeping an eye on that might have a real chance to put themselves on the map here?
Well, I mean, you brought up Verhoff, but like that blue line is nasty. Ryan Lynn might be my favorite prospect in this class. And I'm not saying he's the best prospect in this class, but if he was 6'2", I think he'd be in the conversation, to be the best prospect in this class. So, they got Verhoff, they got DuPont, they got Ryan Lynn, they got Carson Carrolls, who was at the U18s last year too. They got Dax and
Mm-hmm.
Rudolph, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's so loaded. And then, up front, I'm really interested to see Tynan Lawrence, right? We can talk about him in a little bit too, about what,
Yes.
I'm hearing some stuff about what his path is going to be. Mathis Preston, another kid who is so good. Penticton boy, he is so silky playing in Spokane there. I love this kid. I think he's one of these ones that's going to go outside of the top 5. And then in a couple of years, everyone's like, how did this guy go outside the top 5? He is so silky. He's so skilled. So, another one I'm looking forward to. Obviously, we want to see what Belchez is up to. Pearson Bowie, like there's a lot of names on this roster. Like you said, it's just a gauntlet. Like if they don't just run circles around the competition at the Hlinka this year, like something went horribly wrong. But at the same time,
Yeah.
like we'll get into that. I'll let you comment on that. Who are you
Yeah,
looking
I
for?
agree. I mean, like basically, like the rosters that they're going up against really don't inspire a ton of confidence. Looking at the lineup, you had Tynan Lawrence as your number one center, Ethan Belchetz and Liam Ruck on that first line, Mathis Preston with Alessandro Diorio and Beckham Edwards, another two guys that were in the
At
world
the U-teens.
the world under
Mm-hmm.
18s. Adam Valentini as your third line center. Valentini was nasty last year in the USHL, going to Kitchener this year. Colin Fitzgerald is a guy that we're talking about as a first round pick as your fourth line center. Pearson Bowie
Big
as
boy.
your 13th forward. Like there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of different things here. Also, interestingly enough, it looks like Central Scouting's out there because we have some updated heights and weights on some of these players. Ethan Belchet's coming in at 6'4" and a quarter, 228 pounds as a U18 player. That is a large human being. Keaton Verhoff, 6'3" and a half, 208 pounds. So it looks like
He's good.
Dan Marr and the boys got the tape measure and the scales out at Hlinka Gretzky already, and we're getting some good weights and heights and weights there. So yeah, it's this team, and especially that blue line. Rudolph Verhoff is the top pairing. Chartrand and DuPont is the number 2 pairing. Carolls and Lynn as your third pairing. It's nuts. Callum Kroskry, another guy who played in the USHL last year, going to the OHL this year, and Georgios Pantelis is the 8th. I mean, it's a really, really loaded team. So yes, if they're not winning most of their games by multiple goals, I would agree that something has gone horribly, horribly wrong. But
Like if
should we
Lynn
talk a
and
little bit
Carol's
about?
were
Go
your
ahead. Yeah.
I was gonna say if Lynn and Carol's were your first pair, you'd be like, oh, that's nasty. That's a nasty top pair for
Mm-hmm.
the Hlinka, and they're your third pair. Like, yeah,
Yeah, it really is. It really
that's
does
good.
feel like almost like, like when you're putting together an Olympic team and you're like, how is this guy this at this spot in the lineup?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of where it's at. And, you know, explanation about the Hlinka too. USA does not send their NTDP team. They send the guys that aren't in the NTDP. So that does kind of limit the player pool that the US is having. So most of their top
Massively.
players aren't going to be there. They're years ago, like, there were like the 2019 Hlinka Gretzky, which was one of the best ones that we've seen of this event in terms of the quality of talent that was there. The US class had a lot of guys that were outside of the 01 birth year that didn't make the NTDP that were more than able to compete in that tournament. Dustin Wolf was the goalie, like just all kinds of stuff like that. Like this time around, it's not like that. And then when you take Russia out of the mix, the tournament quality has significantly diminished. And you
Yeah.
could say the same thing about the IIHF events as well. We all know why they're not there. They're not going to be back anytime soon. Get over it. And so basically that's where we're at with the Hlinka Gretzky Cup. But let's talk a little bit about that number 1 center for Canada. Tynan Lawrence is a guy that I think, he probably isn't in the top 5 in everybody's draft list. Maybe he's not in the top 10 of some, but I have a feeling that he's going to be. With what I saw in the USHL playoffs last year with the Muskegon Lumberjacks, he was the MVP of the playoffs. Very similar to what we saw from Adam Fantilli in his draft
Yeah.
-1. There's something special with this kid. He looks the part of a top tier player for this NHL draft. But your thoughts on Mr. Tynan Lawrence?
Yeah, like I said, very excited to see him all throughout the year. Like obviously, the Hlinka will be one thing, but like let's see what's going on. But there's been a lot of speculation about where he's going to play, right? Like is that he tore it up already in the USHL for Muskegon, and they won the championship. He won the MVP, like you mentioned. Was he going to move over to the OHL? Was he going to move or to the CHL? Was he going to head over there? And from what I'm hearing from all reports is that he's going to stick. He's going to stay with Muskegon for another year and then go to BU, right, in 25 or in 26, 27. And so I think that's just fine. I think it's fine that that's what he's deciding to do. I might have been interested in seeing him make that move over, especially because I believe Ryabkin will be leaving and heading to the queue there. They're not going to be as strong. He'll have Nestor Sills. Oh, wait, no, Nestor Sills expedited. He's gone too now
UMass.
next year.
Yeah.
So it's right. So it's going to be a different team. They're not going to be as dominant by far. And so I wouldn't have been mad to see him make that jump over to the CHL and just try something new and get a little bit of a different challenge and likely a more challenge for him before he went off to BU. But I mean, if this is what it is, I think he's going to rip it up.
Yeah, and I've heard he's sticking to. I think that for the USHL, it's an incredibly important player.
Massive.
For the league to keep. Obviously, last year we did see Nastrasil, Riker Lee, others. Riker Lee had a great World Junior Summer Showcase, by the way.
Wheeler's pumped.
Yeah, he is. There was a lot of talk about there. Maybe we won't see that next year. Tynan Lawrence is a guy that they can really plant their flag on. His rights are held by Chicoutimi in the QMJHL. And so I do think that that's, he's a native of New Brunswick. There's been talk like what would happen if his rights got traded, all those different things. But I know Muskegon has put a lot of work into keeping him. I think that they have, certainly when you are the guy, I think you'll have certain advantages that for players in that league. And Colton St. Clair is now the head coach there. They did have a coaching change in the end. I think Colton St. Clair is a really up and coming coach and a guy that will do a nice job in that role. But yeah, I mean, we'll have to see exactly what's around him and also what the rest of the USHL looks like. There's going to be a number of players that, are committed to sticking it out in that league. They haven't lost everybody. I know a lot of people have look at some of the losses and but a lot of them are guys that, I haven't seen a ton like Valentini and others those are hurt a bit more because they're guys that could have potentially been, first round draft picks out of your league. But Tynan Lawrence is a guy that, I think all of us that do this job will be watching extremely closely. The expectation for what he can do next season has to be through the roof. And just, it's not always an easy league to score in. We'll see it too could also get a little bit younger. But he did have nearly a point per game last season as a rookie. He is a product of Shattuck St. Mary's, and he did have 18 points in 14 games during Muskegon's run to their first ever Clark Cup. And honestly, a very mature kid and a guy. The other thing about him that I think is great, he's an August 08 birthday.
So young, right?
Just turned 17. So he's just inside the zone of, so I think a lot of teams are seeing this maturity level from him and his progression and still seeing that, oh boy, and he's still very young. So keep an eye on that one. He is a BU commit. He is a big time get for them. He's a guy that we'll be watching with great interest this year. Also, just to kind of quickly review as we get ready for this season, there's a couple of other guys to keep an eye on at this. We talked about the Canadians, of course, but I believe Elton Hermansson is going to be there for Sweden. He's probably one of the top Swedish prospects this year. I don't think you got Ivar Stenberg and Viggo Bjork, and all eyes are going to be on them. Both are expected to be on Sweden's World Junior roster. Magnus Havelid even said that Stenberg he's going to be a big time player for them. He expects Viggo Bjork to be on the team as well. So there's a lot to like there.
I've got a mini hot take here for August.
I want
to just put it out there.
Please.
Is Stenberg the best player in the draft? full encompassing player in the draft as of right now. Like Gavin is obviously the most skilled player in the draft, most skilled, but he does rely on other guys to do the heavy lifting for him, right? Like he's not a digger
Yeah.
where Ivar is. He's a little bit, I think, and playing pro already. I think he might be the
Hmm.
most like complete, the best player as of August 2025. He might be the best player in this class. And another one that if he was just a little bit bigger, like maybe we be like I was saying about Ryan Lynn, maybe we'd be having more of a discussion about this. But this is obviously Gavin's year. But I do think that
Yeah.
I don't know if people are sleeping on him, but I think he is an incredible player.
He's exceptional. He's exceptional. I don't think it's too outlandish to say. I do think that, in terms of pure upside, McKenna has the higher offensive ceiling for me. But,
Without a doubt.
but, but Stenberg is physical despite not being huge. Like he's 5'11", 6 foot, in that range.
Gets under.
He's
Yeah.
sturdy. He's hard to knock off the puck. He's fast. And he
He
has
drives the
skill,
middle.
and he has work
Yeah.
ethic, and he gets to the middle of the ice, and he is a dog. First game at the World Junior Summer Showcase, hat trick, best player on the ice.
Mm.
Just, and that was there was just no doubt about it. Now, James Higgins didn't play in that game. He was probably the only player that was at that camp that really looked, himself at times,
Mm.
or what we expect among the top tier guys that we saw there. But then Stenberg was a guy that really, really popped, and I agree. He is older, which again, he's only
Yeah.
15 days removed from the cutoff for last year's draft. So he is going to be one of the oldest players in this draft class. But what we saw from him with Frölunda in the playoffs last year, that to me was when I just said, "Oh, this is different. This guy's different." He was, playing top six. He was playing power play. Frölunda had to lean on him. And, we
Yeah.
talked about him as a guy that, he was planning to go to college because they
He
were
was going to
calling
be
him
you.
up. He
It
was
was
gonna go.
happening.
He was gonna. I mean, and what an opportunity. Jeez, him and Tynan Lawrence, look out.
That would have been
But
so sick.
anyway, yeah. But now you see, him go and play pro, and then have this opportunity. So keep an eye on him. And also, I did talk to Vigo Bjork about,
Mm.
hey, like his brother's going to Colorado College, Vancouver Canucks draft pick. I just said, what are your plans for this year? He said it's Djurgården staying in. He's hoping that he's gonna get looks with the A team. It's not guaranteed, but he
Mm-mm.
should, because he had
He's
74
small
points
though.
last year.
Yeah, it
He is
sucks.
small, but he's got a great head on his shoulders. He does need to get
Oh
quicker
yeah.
in order to be
Yeah.
a real player. But I mean, beyond that, like we're looking at this Swedish class, and I think there's a couple of guys that could potentially go in the first round outside of those two guys. But it's not particularly amazing there. The Czechs, their best players have aged out. Novotny's not going to be there. So you've got, Frantisek Politin, who's the goaltender, who I think has been really
Mm.
solid in other showings. He's super young,
Yeah.
and a guy that can really, really help. And then on the U.S. roster, a couple names just or a name to really keep a close eye on. Jack Hextall, who played for the Youngstown Phantoms last year, didn't have eye-popping numbers last year, but I really liked what I saw from him early in the season. And as he goes into his next year, I think he's got a chance to be a solid player for Team USA at that tournament. So those are just some names. Anything else on the Hlinka Gretzky Cup? Because we're going to talk about the Hlinka Gretzky again a little bit in terms of exactly how much we want to read into it. But beyond that, I mean, I think that we've got some really, it's just exciting that the season is starting more than anything else.
Yeah, I'll save my opinions for beyond belief on that, or you have to pick.
Yeah, and you won't have to wait long because, ladies and gentlemen, back by popular demand, we are here, and it is our Beyond Belief segment. It is the part of the show where one of us will read a statement to the other, and we will decide whether it is believable or beyond belief. And we're going to start things off here, and we're both going to get a chance to talk about this. The Hlinka Gretzky Cup is an informative scouting event. Cam Robinson, your thoughts?
There's information to be gleaned for sure, but it's funny. Earlier today, I'm out digging, trying to level out the yard. I'm making my kid like the ultimate shooting spot inside the house. back-breaking labor. It's great. And I'm texting with a scout, and he's asking if I was going to the Hlinka next week. And I said, no, I'm not going to go this year. So far to go, Slovakia and Czechia for a 5-day tournament. It's my daughter's got a birthday. My best buddy's got a wedding. So I'm not going this year, but I was like, I'll probably catch as much as I can on tape. And he said, do yourself a favor and don't watch it, because if everybody's watching the same thing, everybody's getting the same bias early in the summer, and then they're anchoring to that bias throughout the year. And he's like, I stopped watching the Hlinka a couple of years ago, and now I'm the smartest guy in the room because I'm not anchored to these things like Adam Banash last year, right? Everyone's like, oh my gosh, he looks like a first rounder. How high could he go? Could he be a teen, right? And no, he's not, right? But I feel like I'm pretty good at not anchoring to those early season ones. Like, yeah, I like Banach's play at the Hlinka. I was like, it's a good player. By Christmas, I was convinced he's a mid-rounder at best. So I'm able to shift
Yeah.
my theories on this, and I don't, for the most part, I don't anchor. But but sometimes it's like you go to one of these events and you're like, hot dog, this kid is amazing. Matthew Schaefer, I think he could go top 2. And I thought that based on that early Hlinka time, following on the heels of his under 18s the year before as an underager, where I was like, God, this kid is better than I thought. He keeps getting better. And that kind of anchoring stayed, and it was the right anchoring. So
Yeah.
I won't get to see every game because I'm not going to be there in person, but I'm not super mad about it. And I will catch some of the games. I will watch some of the Canadian games probably because that's where the most of the talent is. But at the end of the day, it's like, it's going to be weighted against a whole lot of views for their club teams, and then more international ones later in the year when things really matter.
Right. And I would actually venture to say that it used to be a bigger deal. And I think it used to
Mm,
be more important, and it used to be more competitive, and it used to be a, a little bit more informational. So I'm going to say it's beyond
yeah.
belief. I agree. So I'll give you a couple of examples of things that I thought, and then, as the year goes on, the opinions change. I agree with you. I try not to anchor my thoughts to that one tournament. But years ago, 2018 Hlinka Gretzky Cup, one of the
This is Pod
guys that
Colton.
wowed me. No, this is he was
No.
no, no, this is, or I guess I'm sorry, this was the 2017 Hlinka for the 2018
Okay, there we
draft.
go.
So yeah, so
Yeah.
it's the year, but yeah, the 2018 Hlinka was Pod Colson. He's another example. But that
Anchored.
example was, I'm watching the Hlinka Gretzky Cup, and Jack McBain is just torching it
Mm,
for Canada. He had 5 points in the tournament, but he was hitting everything. He was just unstoppable for these U18 players. And a big man. Now, he did become an everyday NHLer, but he came out of that tournament of people talking about him as a potential first round pick. He ends up being I think a third round pick by the Minnesota Wild. Doesn't actually sign with the Wild. Now, he's become an everyday NHLer. But there was a period of time when he was in college too, where it looked like he wasn't a prospect at all.
no.
But you go into that and you're like, wow. And then you have this. So then now you've got to work backwards on that player, because now all of a sudden they're not showing what that, what they did there. Vasily Podkolzin, probably a top 10 pick based largely on that tournament. Like, yes, he played
Yep.
in the KHL. Yes, he played at the under 18 Worlds, but at the
Barely.
under 18 Worlds, he
Yeah.
was ordinary. So like
Yeah.
he was really ordinary. And like, Rodion Amirov was actually the best Russian player at that tournament. RIP to him. But like that, it was Vasily Podkolzin. We were, blown away
He looks so
by
good.
not just the power and the just
Yeah.
the strength. And
Skill. Yeah.
some of these guys are just more prepared for this tournament in August than anyone else. I think
Mm.
it's actually become, I will watch it, but I am probably not taking notes on it anymore.
Ooh, all right. I like that.
Yeah.
All right. All
So
right. All
I
right.
won't
Yeah.
file my own personal reports on it. I will watch it. It's a good baseline. Um, but now with no Russia, with, some of these European teams being less competitive, there are just fewer
USA
games. Like,
down years.
usually
Yeah.
the championship game is a good game, and that, I think usually it's because all the Canadian kids that's the only game they're nervous for.
Yeah.
So they have to like recover from that first. But I do want to say,
Yeah.
just before we move on, slagging the thing, the all-time single tournament leading scorers for this tournament in recent times: Matvey Michkov, Jerome McGinley,
Hmm. Hmm.
Dalibor Dvorsky, Cole Perfetti, Alexander Ovechkin. But then you keep going down in the more recent years, it's Victor Klingsell, it's Vasily Podkolzin,
Last year.
Alexis
Yeah.
Lafreniere, so Tommy Novak 1 year for Team USA. So like those are the things where you
The
just kind of start
hodgepodge.
saying, okay, how much can I really glean from it? All right, sir, I turn the
Mhm.
floor back to you.
All right, I got a good one for you here. The upcoming Hobey Baker winner will be a CHL alumnus. A former CHLer is going to be carrying that Hobey Baker around in like 8 months. What do you think?
I'm going to say it's beyond belief for two reasons. Now, let me tell you
Ooh.
something. I do think that guys like Gavin McKenna, Porter Martone, um, you know, even Roger McQueen and Caden Lindstrom and those types of players, I think they're going to be in the mix. I think they're going to do great things. The reason that I'm
But
saying it's beyond belief is I do think that there is going to be a bit of a learning curve for some of these players here. I think there is going to be some rude awakenings happening because the game at the collegiate level is going to provide, it's going to be more structured to play against. It is going to be faster. It is going to be more physical. I think the adjustment period for those players is going to be a little bit greater than they realize. You look at the guys that have success as true freshmen, guys like Macklin Celebrini,
special.
Adam Fantilli. What are what are the things that they have? They have something special to them. Then you look at other guys like Brady Kachuk. He was a good college player, but he didn't have those kinds of numbers. James Hagens last year, really good player, didn't necessarily have the kind of numbers that were exceptional. I think it is a difficult transition for these players to make, and once they get there, there's that. Here's the other conspiracy theory thing. It's like, how eager is the Hobie committee going to be to vote for these players that are more than likely
Uh,
one and done players? So that is a part of it as well. And I, having gone through that process before, I've been in, there have been plenty of opportunities to see. I have no idea how it's going to go, but I'm going to say that it is beyond belief that we'll see a CHL player. And I'm in my preseason pick at this point is probably going to end up being somebody like a James. I haven't decided yet, but it's probably going to be somebody like a James Hagens who's had that prior learning experience and is coming back into this opportunity
mhm.
where it's like, oh, and he will have a different situation. I actually think playing with Perot and Leonard somehow hurt him last year. I think he's going to be
Yeah.
the show this year, and that's going to help him. So we'll see what happens there. Any thoughts from you, or do you think that I may have did I make a good enough case for you for that to be beyond belief?
I think you nailed it. And I was gonna go I was gonna say it at some point too, is that everybody thinks that all these players are gonna just transition and light it up. And college hockey is no joke. Yeah, sure. We'd love to see McKenna put up 70 next year. I don't think it's going to be a cakewalk for him. I think it's going to be a
No,
challenge. And like you said, a kid like Hagens, it's going to be his team now at BC. He'll have Teddy Stiga on his wing. Like he'll have some familiarity there, but it will be a bit of a different circumstance. But he has that experience already. Or insert any random third or fourth year college player who's about to pop, right, and score 25 and put up 60 points that you didn't see coming. And they're going to have all the other things that the Hobey Baker committee looks for off ice, charitable work, all that stuff that goes into it. It's not just the best player on the ice. So I'm going to agree with you and say it's
right.
beyond belief.
Yeah, yeah, but hey, I think that we are going into the era of maybe the most skilled collegiate field we've ever
Mm,
seen in college hockey, which
I'm so
is a
excited.
lot of fun. Yeah. All right. Cam, I got one for you. This is to allow you to put your Mr. Canada hat on. This is a tough one because we saw these players in camp briefly. Canada is still the favorite to win the World Junior Championship, even if Matthew Schaefer, Zane Perek, and Sam Dickinson are not available because they're in the NHL.
Gosh. Like there goes your first pair for sure, right? And then your
Gone.
number 3 like gone. Like
Gone.
that would be tough. That would be tough to say that they're going to be the favorite at that case, because now it's like, who's your one? Is it Brunicki, right? Like, who's your one at that point? So yeah, I
It
think that
it
would be Yeah, that would be massively detrimental to the team. And we saw them last year fail to be able to move the puck. And that was one of, they were kind of death by a million cuts last year, but not being
Yeah.
able to move the puck offensively was the biggest one. And that was losing Schaefer and choosing not to bring Parekh and
Right.
just, roster decisions. I do expect that they're going to make some better choices this year on skill
Yeah.
alone. But yeah, gosh, I'm going to say it's beyond belief. I don't think that they would be the favorites if they lost all three of those guys.
I think you're right. And I think being at the summer showcase crystallized that a little bit because you got to see, okay, what does it look like when they're not there? And they did have 8 injuries. Not one of those injuries was to a defenseman. They were all
Except for
forwards that
Zane.
were not able to participate. So that was the thing. So you're looking at, yes, Harrison Brunicky, Cameron Reed, Kayshawn Aitchison, like they're good
Ben
players.
Danford.
They're good players.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ben Danford, Henry Muse, and these are
Yeah.
the players that we're talking about as potential, and you look at, okay, well, who's moving those pucks? I think at a world
Verhoff?
junior level. Yeah, yeah. Well, that's the thing. I think Keaton Verhoff has to be part of the mix if
Yeah.
those guys aren't available, and that does help you a bit. And I've seen, like, if you think, like, I don't think it's a lock that Schaefer makes the Islanders. I don't think it's a lock that he
Ooh.
plays the whole season
I,
there. So,
I'm going to say it's a
and
lock
that's
he
the
plays
thing.
for the Islanders, though. I'm going to say it's a lock he
You
makes that team. Oh yeah,
you
I
think
think
it's
at
a
this
lock
point,
that
I
he
think I think that they're prepared. I think something would have to go wrong at this point for him to be back in Erie.
probably, but at the same time, I'm just like, I saw a guy that, he's just coming back. His
I
skating is
know.
just unbelievable. There's a lot
So
to
good.
like, but man, I just think that's one that if the Islanders aren't careful with it, they have a real chance to mess that up.
Yeah.
And yes, I do. I think he'll make it out of camp. Do I think he's playing 9 games? 100% I do. Do I think do I
Yeah.
think that they keep him, and maybe they do go kind of like that, that Leo Carlson route where we're
Sit
going
him
to play
out,
you in
bring him
select
in.
games. We're going to get you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which were did that work? We don't know yet. Like
Yeah.
Leo's
He looked pretty
he was
good.
okay this year, he's
He looked pretty
fine, but
good.
it was like,
He
was
looked
he
pretty good.
is pretty, we'll see. So,
Yeah.
yeah, but I think, but here's the thing, I don't think USA would be the next favorite.
God,
I
who
think it
would
would be
be the next
Sweden.
favorite? Because I don't like Sweden's roster. I don't love Sweden's
I like
roster
it better
either.
than I like it. I think I like it better than I like most of the other ones. And the reason being, I think that their blue line, while they don't have the same pedigree as
Mm-hmm.
Canada and the US, what I saw based on, Salin Wallenius, Victor Johansson, seeing that was a big surprise to me. Victor Johansson was a
Yeah,
beast, and
I heard he was
like, it's
good.
summer hockey, but he also had a like 30-point increase in production this year in Sweden. So there's a lot like that. Sasha Boumedienne, all those guys that are really, that's good. The goaltending is a big concern. I don't know if they have the goaltending.
Mm.
Luve Herenstam is probably not the answer for that. But then you have Frondell, Eklund. You have, the young guys,
Bjork, the
Stenberg,
Bjork
Bjork.
boys. But like,
You
but like the
have,
Americans,
you
they
know,
got Cole Hudson and EJ. They're going to reunite again. That dynamic pair from
yeah,
from the U18 days, right? Like,
hopefully,
I don't know
yeah,
when
we'll
when
see.
you get a Cole Iserman on your second line. You got Hagens, you got Stiga. I don't know, matching up. Give me US over Sweden
Yeah.
at this event. I think
Well, the one thing that I think we also learned at the World Junior Summer Showcase is that USA may not have a goalie. So that's
that's a
you go
maybe an
from
issue.
you go from you go from 2 years of having Trey Augustine and Jacob Fowler, Trey Augustine and Hampton Slakinski, to guys that right
Nick Kemp,
now some of the players on their
who
roster
is
may
it?
not be the starting goalie on their college team. Caleb Heil
Yeah, who
will
is
be
it?
put back in the USHL.
Yeah,
So Nick Kemp is probably the
right. It's
odds-on
Kemp.
favorite to be the number one, but he's not. I
Yeah,
don't think he's going to be the primary number one at Notre Dame. Like, I think he's going to split time at Notre Dame. So it's like,
platoon.
who's
Yeah,
actually playing at the time? So there's a lot. There's a lot to break down
yeah.
with that. All right, let's close out this beyond belief segment that we've beyond believed so far.
Yeah, we've milked this one. Okay, the NHL, the NCAA, the CHL, and all the other lower junior entities will work together to get this new movement landscape under control by next summer. This might be the easiest beyond belief ever.
Yeah. It's beyond belief. It's beyond belief.
Hey, yeah.
And like, and the
Agreed.
reason being, like, here's the thing. I do think that there is work being done behind the scenes right now. But the hardest part is that the NCAA isn't beholden to any of that. Like, there's no
Yeah,
transfer agreement. There's no payment agreement. There's nothing
just do what they
that
want.
anyone can do because they operate outside of the umbrella. The USHL is under hockey, USA Hockey's umbrella.
USA.
The CHL leagues are under Hockey Canada's umbrella. They're beholden to a transfer agreement. I do think that there will be significant movement in changing the language and the compensation and all of those things in the transfer agreement that exists currently. There is, like, you are entitled, if you say you are a USHL team that has lost a player to the CHL, you're entitled to some level of compensation in order to sign the transfer card and other things like that. So there are mechanisms in place to do those things, but that doesn't exist for the NCAA. I do think the NHL is going to take a very significant stand, like, and the things that they provide money for. So there's grant money for all those leagues. They're paying those guys for draft picks and all those different things. There is some NHL funding that kind of goes to college programs through like College Hockey Inc. and other things like that, but not necessarily is the NCAA seeing any real benefit from the NHL. That really helps them. So I think that this is going to, for at least for the next year, this is going to be a situation where everybody's butting heads. They're not getting along. We still see this player movement. I do think that one day people are going to figure out that if they don't start working together, they're all going to be in a worse position. While only the strong survive. I did talk to one USHL guy, and his whole thing was like, it's all about adapt or die. If we don't adapt, then we are in trouble. And I think that that's ongoing. So it's much more likely that they do the things that you talked about at the top of the show, Cam, where we're going for this thing or that thing, where it's like, hey, we're going to invest in our getting a better strength training system. We're going to invest in a better locker room. We're going to invest in a better bus, whatever. Those are the things that I think we'll see much more likely than these entities all getting in a room and hashing this out. But I'd love to be wrong on that, but I don't think I will be.
No, I think you are spot on that.
All right, Cam, how about we close out the show with our final segment? What do you think? It's summer. We're putting in the work. We're putting in a shift for the people in August. If you are a listener of this show, no show is going to go harder for you in August than Called Up the Prospects podcast. I guarantee it. Anyway, here's our last segment. It is You Have to Pick One, in which we give each other a one or the other scenario, and you have to pick one. And so the question I have for you, Mr. Cam Robinson, was we talk about the Hlinka Gretzky Cup, and not to, downgrade it so much, but I think we both are probably on the same page of this one. You have to pick one. You only get to scout one event the entire, you have to pick. You only have a budget to do one or the other. And I think our money has already spoken for this. But anyway, it's the Hlinka Gretzky Cup or the Under-18 World Championships. You got Hlinka Gretzky Cup in August. You got the Under-18 World Championship in April into May. What are you doing?
U18s. Every time. I love the U18s. I go every year. I sometimes go to the Hlinka. It's fine. But the U18s gives me so much more. Yeah, it's a bummer we don't get all the top CHLers because they're playing playoffs. But it's okay. I've had a chance to see them a ton anyways, but it'd be great if they could, I don't know, massage that a little bit, kick it back a couple more weeks, maybe get me some more of them. Yeah. But no, it's the U18s. It's the U18s for me for sure. You got the Americans, right? You got the programs there. You've got the majority of the top Canadians. You got most of the good Euros, right? Yes, we don't have Russia there either, but one day maybe. It's for me, it's night and day on quality, on what information you can glean from it. It's right before the draft. It's and it's a great time. Usually we get some barbecue or something. Like I'm down. I'm down. It's versus like going to Edmonton in August, and I'm like, all right.
Yeah,
You know,
may
I
not
guess I'm
get
going.
barbecue in Slovakia next year. So
Maybe not. Yeah.
maybe not. But yeah,
Yeah.
and I agree. And I think, obviously, the Hlinka Gretzky Cup has taken on many different forms. There was the time where it's been in Edmonton and then back in Europe. I think that it's going to stay in Europe now for the foreseeable future.
Yeah. Do we
And
not get one more
I
Edmonton?
I'm not
Is
sure.
there
I
one
haven't
more?
heard definitively yet on that, but like
Yeah.
that maybe they do. But yeah, but I think
I
eventually
think
if
long
it's not
term.
one more, yeah, I think we're probably going
Yeah.
back to, it was really a Slovakia Czech tournament before. But the under
Mhm.
18s, it's structured like the World Juniors. I think the format lends itself a bit better to competition. We have multiple elimination games as opposed to the way it works with Linka, where it's a shorter tournament. You get two fewer games essentially, even for the teams that are advancing further into the tournament. So, I think that for me, it's a little bit more comprehensive in what you're getting at the under 18s, and also it's a better time of year. Summer hockey is still summer hockey. You don't want to read too much into it. Some players are going to be more prepared than others to play in that event, whereas you're getting players that are right at the tail end of their season. Maybe they're banged up, but beyond that, they've been playing all year. They're at the top of their game, and they're all looking to make that best last impression for the draft. So give me that one with a bullet. So yeah, I don't think that was one of the easier you have to pick ones that we've done
Super
in a
easy.
while. Yeah. Cam,
It's August.
it is summer, but things are happening. Things are happening. What can the reading faithful look forward to at Elite Prospects coming up this season?
Like more TikTok videos of me in my backyard pool talking about hockey, probably. Sprinkle in a couple of those. No, we're working on some stuff. Obviously, we've got our annual organizational prospect rankings. I've signed up for a whole bunch of them. We're doing a little different this year. So not one guy is writing the lead and then 16 breakdowns on all the prospects. We're picking and choosing guys. So like I'm writing 4 for this team, 3 for this team, 2 for this team, doing a couple leads for the other ones. So it's a lot of fun that way. You can really target in on the players you've seen a ton and you have a good mindset for, versus like having to go back and watch tape on the 14th best project or prospect in the Devil system. So that's going to start firing up at the end of this month. We'll do our affiliated rankings too, where we rank the top prospects in the NHL, drafted prospects as well. That's going to be cooking. Myself and Ryan Lambert are working on a little piece projecting some of the Olympic rosters, just getting that teased out. Obviously, we're going to be covering the Hlinka a ton at EP. We got a couple boys there in Central Europe that are going to have boots on the ground, so we'll have coverage of that as well. So yeah, lots of stuff. We're firing it back up. Summer's over, shirt's back on. We're getting focused.
Thank you for putting your shirt back on. We all are appreciative of that, making the rest of us look
Give the
bad.
people
So
what they want.
anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, well, hey, we've got a lot coming up on FloHockey too. Obviously, we're really excited this year. We've added the QMJHL to the fold. We've got more announcements
Mm-hmm.
coming down the road here. Now is the time. I mean, we're basically about 6 weeks away from the start of the junior hockey season, maybe 7 at most here. I know, the QMJHL season starting on the 18th or 17th, and then you've also got the USHL Fall Classic on the way starting around the same
Oh
time.
yes.
Big game in that USHL Fall Classic, the rematch of the Clark Cup Finals, Waterloo versus Muskegon. Tynan Lawrence in front of
Are you
a good bit
going?
of scouts there. I should be there. I mean, if I'm not there, Flo will be there in some shape or form. So,
I
but
wonder if
yeah,
I'm supposed to
that's a
go. I
good
haven't
one.
talked about that.
Yeah,
Shoot. Yeah,
yeah,
that's a fun
that's
one.
a good one. That's a good one. And then you've also got, the start of the AHL and ECHL college hockey. We were going to have some new college hockey to talk about too. So really looking forward to this season. So what I'm going to tell everybody that if you listen to this show, obviously make sure you're getting all the news that Elite Prospects, all the stats and all the juicy stuff you can get from them. But man, when it comes to streaming, let me tell you about a little place called
Mm-hmm.
FloHockey. Get that annual subscription. I'm telling you right now, it is the best value anywhere. We have more live hockey than literally at least the leagues that you want to know about. We've got a lot of that. So make sure you are coming on over to FloHockey. to see all of the great live events that we have. And then also all of our coverage as well, including things like this Called Up the Prospects podcast, where we talk about prospects in depth in the early stages of August. Are you nuts? We're nuts. Yes, we just gave you about almost an hour and a half of our summer, and hopefully it has made mowing the lawn better. Maybe you're floating by the pool. Maybe you don't have a shirt on. You can keep those pictures to yourself. Cam will share them. He'll share his own. We don't need more. But yeah, so Cam, I mean, hey, like it might be summer, but there's a lot of hockey to talk about. And hey, we back for season 2, man. It's great to have you back on board and doing this. I mean, we've had such fun, tremendous growth on the podcast as well. So thank you to everybody that has been watching, listening, downloading. Make sure you're leaving 5-star ratings and reviews. We really do need those to continue to grow, and those help a ton. And you guys have been awesome about that. So please keep that up. Cam, hey, let's enjoy summer with a little bit of Hlinka Gretzky Cup mix in there too. How about it?
Why not? Why not? We are back. I'm excited. We got to get another sponsor. I'm hungry too.
yeah, exactly. Let's do that next. And for our next trick, something to feed us. Yes, yeah. But anyway, folks, that's going to do it for this week's episode of Called Up the Prospects podcast. Like I said, we are back. So make sure you join us next time as we talk more about the 2026 NHL draft, the upcoming season, and so much more. For Cam Robinson, I'm Chris Peters. We'll see you next time.